All right, today we are pulling back the bed curtains on one of history's most, well, intimate customs. We're talking about the public wedding night. Yep, you heard that right.
Seriously, just try to picture it. You've had the ceremony, the big feast, all the dancing, and now your parents, your friends, your neighbors, everyone is following you into the bedroom to, tuck you and your new spouse in for the night. Sounds like a total nightmare, doesn't it?
Well, for hundreds of years across Europe, for everyone from peasants all the way up to princes, this public ritual, the bedding ceremony, wasn't just some common, weird thing. It was absolutely essential. It was the final critical step that made a marriage legally unbreakable.
Okay, so we've got to dive into this. Why on earth would anyone agree to have an audience for what is supposed to be the most private moment of their life?
The reason wasn't about romance. Not really. It was all about solving a huge legal problem. See, back in a time before you got a neat little marriage certificate, you needed proof. And the bedding ceremony, that provided the ultimate undeniable proof that a marriage was real and completed.
And to really get that, we need to look at how medieval canon law actually defined what a marriage was. Turns out, it wasn't a single event at all, but more of a two-part process.
There was this incredibly influential legal scholar named Gratian, writing way back around the year 1140, and he laid it all out. He said, a marriage has an initiation, that's the start, and a perfection, that's the completion. And you absolutely needed both to create that truly unbreakable bond.
So let's break this down. Stage 1 is consent. That's the exchange of vows, the I do's. This created a totally real, valid marriage. But, and this is the key part, it was a marriage the church could still dissolve if it needed to. It was stage 2, consummation, or as they called it, copula carnalis, the fleshly connection, that made it permanent. That physical act is what turned a legal contract into a sacrament that could not be broken.
This legal gray area actually had a name: ratified but not consummated. It means ratified but not consummated. Think of it as the medieval version of an escape hatch. If a powerful family suddenly needed to break an alliance, or if a queen like Catherine of Aragon needed to prove her first marriage didn't count so she could marry her husband's brother, well, you could argue the first marriage was never consummated. This put a crazy amount of legal and political pressure on the wedding night.
So, if consummation was the legal deadbolt on a marriage, how do you prove it actually happened? Simple. You invite everybody in to watch the lead-up anyway. Here's how it all went down. The whole thing was actually a pretty rowdy, festive party. It would start with a big procession, everyone leading the couple from the feast right to the bedchamber, usually with music playing and lots of bawdy jokes. Then a priest would bless the bed, to make sure it was fertile and to ward off any evil spirits. The couple would then share a posset, which was this sweet, spiced wine meant to give them a little strength. After that came the stocking toss, kind of a precursor to the garter toss. Guests would literally throw the couple stockings, and if you hit the bride or groom, hey, you'd be the next one to get married. And then finally, the bed curtains were drawn, and the couple was left in, let's call it, semi-privacy. So why have all those people there? They weren't just there for the party. They were legal witnesses. They were there to basically say, yep, we saw them go to bed together. This was crucial to shut down any future claims that the marriage wasn't consummated. It guaranteed that any kids from the union were legitimate heirs. It was really the whole community saying, we see this, we endorse this marriage is now a fact.
But let's step away from the law books and the public spectacle for a second. What did this actually feel like for the couple? Especially for a bride who, in many cases, might have just met her new husband. This is where public duty and private feelings just crashed into each other.
This quote, though from a historical novel, just nails that internal struggle. For a young woman, maybe in a marriage that was arranged for political reasons, this wasn't a romantic, magical moment. It was a performance. It was a duty to her family, a duty to her new husband, and one she had to get through with a crowd of people just outside the curtains. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? On one side, you have the bride's reality, this immense pressure, turning one of the most intimate acts into a public obligation. But on the other side, you have the community's view. It's a happy, maybe slightly drunk celebration that locks in a vital alliance and ensures the family line will continue. Two completely different realities happening in the very same room. Now, you can imagine that this intense collision of public duty and private feeling couldn't last forever. So if this custom was so important legally and socially, what happened to it? How did we get from that to the modern honeymoon?
Well, the change didn't happen overnight. It kind of started in 1563, when the Council of Trent decided that the formal church ceremony itself carried more legal weight, which lessened the need for all that physical proof. Then you had individuals who started to push back. Around 1625, King Charles I famously just barred the door to his own bedding ceremony. That was a huge deal at the time. Over the next century or so, as our modern ideas about personal privacy began to form, the custom just faded away, especially among the upper classes, and it was pretty much gone by the late 1700s.
Okay, so we have to clear something up here. The bedding ceremony often gets confused with something called the droit du seigneur, or the right of the first night. That's the idea that a lord could sleep with a vassal's new bride. But historians are really clear on this. It's almost entirely a myth. It was more of a scary story about the abuse of power. In fact, the only medieval law that even mentions it, from Spain in 1486, explicitly forbids it, calling it a crime. And yet, little echoes of the ceremony haven't completely disappeared. I mean, think about it. When a bride tosses her bouquet or a groom takes off and tosses the garter, what's really happening there? They're acting out a faint, much more playful version of that medieval stocking toss. It's a symbolic little nod to the community's investment in the couple's future.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. It's so easy for us to look back at the bedding ceremony and just see a shocking invasion of privacy, but in changing marriage from this public, witnessed, community-wide investment into something that's entirely private and romantic, have we lost anything, and what have we gained? When a marriage's success is no longer a public stake, but a private hope, does that make it stronger, or maybe more fragile? Something to think about.